Alex Eala vs Maya Joint. 1 year later. Everything is different. 1 year can change everything. A year ago, Alex Eala walked off a grass court in Eastbourne carrying one of the most painful defeats of her young career. She had been within touching distance of the biggest title she had ever played for. The finish line was right in front of her. The trophy was almost in her hands. Then it vanished. Across the net stood an Australian teenager named Maya Joint, a player who simply refused to accept defeat. Every time Eala thought the match was finally over, Joint found another answer. Every championship point became another opportunity to survive. Every rally became another test of belief. When the final point ended, Maya Joint celebrated one of the most remarkable comebacks of the season, while Alex Eala could only stand still and wonder how a match she had nearly won had slipped away. For most players, a loss like that leaves a permanent scar. But sometimes scars become motivation. And exactly 1 year later, fate has delivered something that sports rarely offers. A second chance. Not at Eastbourne. Not in another WTA final. But on the biggest stage tennis has to offer. Wimbledon. As the draw was revealed, one matchup immediately caught the attention of anyone who remembered what happened 12 months earlier. Alex Eala vs Maya Joint. A rematch that suddenly meant far more than a place in the third round. Because this wasn't simply another match. It was unfinished business. To understand why this meeting matters so much, you have to understand how dramatically both careers have changed. Last summer, Alex Eala was still viewed as one of the sport's brightest young prospects. People admired her talent. They respected her work ethic. But very few believed she was ready to challenge the world's elite consistently. She was still trying to prove she belonged. The Eastbourne final looked like the beginning of something special. Instead, it became a lesson. One that was painful enough to reshape the way she approached her entire career. After leaving England, Eala didn't spend weeks talking about what had gone wrong. She didn't make excuses. She didn't blame bad luck. Instead, she returned to the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca and quietly went back to work. The cameras disappeared. The headlines faded. What remained were countless hours on the practice courts. Improving movement. Strengthening her serve. Sharpening her return game. Learning how to finish points with greater authority. Perhaps most importantly, learning how to handle pressure. Every professional athlete eventually discovers that talent alone isn't enough. The difference between good players and champions often comes down to how they respond after disappointment. Some allow one painful defeat to define them. Others use it as fuel. Alex Eala chose the second path. The months that followed weren't perfect. Like every young player trying to climb the rankings, she experienced victories that built confidence and losses that tested it. There were encouraging performances on clay. There were frustrating early exits. There were moments when everything clicked, followed by matches where nothing seemed to work. But beneath those results, something important was happening. Her game was evolving. Her decision-making became quicker. She started recognizing patterns earlier during rallies. Instead of reacting to opponents, she began dictating play herself. That transformation became even more obvious when the tour returned to grass. Grass has always rewarded players willing to play aggressively. Points develop faster. The bounce stays lower. Hesitation gets punished. Confidence gets rewarded. Suddenly, many of Eala's natural strengths became even more dangerous. Her left-handed serve pulled opponents far outside the doubles alley. Her flat forehand skidded through the court before defenders could fully prepare. Her willingness to attack the net shortened points before opponents could establish rhythm. Everything seemed to fit together. Almost as though her game had been waiting for this surface all along. Her breakthrough came in Birmingham. Entering the tournament as one of the favorites created a completely different kind of pressure. This time she wasn't chasing expectations. She was carrying them. Every opponent wanted to defeat the top seed. Every match demanded patience. Every round became slightly more difficult than the last. Yet Eala continued advancing. By the time she reached the championship match, another emotional challenge appeared. She dropped the opening set. Immediately, memories of Eastbourne threatened to return. Another grass court final. Another difficult start. Another opportunity slipping away. Many young players would have panicked. Alex didn't. Instead of rushing between points, she slowed everything down. She trusted the work she had put in over the previous 12 months. Little by little, momentum shifted. Her first serve percentage improved. Her forehand became more aggressive. Her movement looked lighter. By the deciding set, she wasn't thinking about the past anymore. She was focused entirely on the next point. When the final ball landed out, she lifted the trophy. The celebration looked emotional. Not because Birmingham was the biggest title of her career, but because it represented something even more valuable. Proof. Proof that she had learned from Eastbourne instead of being haunted by it. Proof that she could close difficult matches. Proof that pressure no longer controlled her. The confidence from Birmingham followed her into the next tournaments. At Queen's Club, she encountered a difficult opponent who completely disrupted her rhythm. The defeat was convincing. But unlike earlier moments in her career, one disappointing performance didn't become two. Instead of dwelling on the loss, she immediately focused on Berlin. What happened there changed the conversation surrounding Alex Eala completely. She defeated elite opposition. Not once, not twice, again and again. Each victory carried greater significance than the last. She wasn't relying on lucky draws. She wasn't benefiting from retirements. She was beating some of the strongest players in women's tennis through fearless shot-making and remarkable composure. Analysts began noticing something different. Her confidence no longer depended on the ranking across the net. Whether facing a top 10 player or someone outside the top 50, her approach remained almost identical. Attack early. Take the ball on the rise. Control the center of the court. Finish points whenever possible. That consistency is one of the hardest qualities for young players to develop. Alex was beginning to master it. Although her run eventually ended before the final, the message had already spread throughout the tour. Alex Eala was becoming a legitimate threat on grass. By the time Wimbledon arrived, the rankings reflected her remarkable progress. For the first time in history, a Filipino player entered a Grand Slam as a seeded competitor. It wasn't simply a personal achievement. It represented an important moment for tennis in the Philippines. Young players watching at home suddenly had living proof that reaching the highest levels of the sport was possible. Expectations naturally increased. Instead of arriving quietly, Eala now carried the hopes of an entire nation. Sometimes that kind of attention becomes overwhelming. Instead, it seemed to energize her. Walking onto the court for her opening round match, she immediately looked comfortable. There were no signs of nervousness. No tentative swings. No hesitation. From the opening game, she established complete control. Her serve repeatedly earned free points. Her returns immediately placed her opponent under pressure. Whenever a short ball appeared, she attacked without hesitation. The scoreboard moved quickly. Game after game slipped away from her opponent. The statistics painted a picture of complete dominance. Winner after winner. Very few unforced errors. Consistent pressure on nearly every return game. Most impressive of all was the speed with which she finished the match. She conserved both physical and emotional energy. At a Grand Slam, that matters. Long tournaments often reward players who avoid unnecessary battles during the early rounds. Alex had done exactly that. She left the court looking fresh, confident, and fully prepared for the challenge waiting in the second round. Only this challenge wasn't just another opponent. It was the player responsible for one of the most unforgettable losses of her career. Maya Joint. The name that had lingered quietly in the back of her mind for an entire year. Now, on the grass courts of Wimbledon, destiny had brought them together once again. And while Alex Eala had spent the last 12 months transforming herself into one of the tour's fastest rising stars, Maya Joint had been fighting an entirely different battle. One that almost ended her season before it truly began. As the players prepare to step onto the grass once again, rankings and statistics suddenly begin to matter a little less. Tennis has always been a sport where confidence can change everything in the space of a single afternoon. Alex Eala arrives carrying the momentum of one of the strongest grass court seasons of her career. Every tournament has reinforced the belief that she belongs among the sport's rising stars, and every victory has added another layer of confidence to her game. For Maya Joint, the journey has been completely different. Her season has been defined by setbacks, injuries, and difficult losses that tested both her confidence and resilience. Yet one unforgettable victory reminded everyone, including herself, that talent doesn't disappear during hard times. Sometimes it simply waits for the right moment to reappear. That contrast is what makes this matchup so compelling. Eala wants to prove that she has grown beyond the heartbreak of the past. Joint wants to prove that her biggest victories are not behind her but still ahead. Neither player will be thinking about headlines once the first ball is struck. Instead, every point will become its own battle, every service game another opportunity to seize momentum. The tactical battle promises to be fascinating. If Eala can dictate with her left-handed serve and attack early, she'll force Joint onto the defensive from the very beginning. But if Joint can extend rallies, absorb pressure, and disrupt Eala's rhythm, she has every chance to make the match far closer than many expect. Perhaps the biggest question is how each player handles the biggest moments. Pressure has a way of revealing everything. It exposes confidence, magnifies doubt, and rewards those willing to stay calm when the stakes are highest. That's exactly what happened in their previous meeting, and it's likely to happen again. This time, however, Alex Eala walks onto the court as a more experienced and more complete player. The lessons she learned over the past year have transformed both her game and her mindset. She no longer looks like a promising prospect trying to announce herself. She looks like a competitor ready to challenge anyone on one of tennis's greatest stages. Whether this match ends in straight sets or develops into another dramatic three-set battle, one thing is certain. Both players have earned their place here. Their journeys have taken very different paths, but they've arrived at the same destination with everything still to play for. Sometimes sports offer rare opportunities to rewrite history. Wimbledon has provided exactly that. Now it's up to Alex Eala and Maya Joint to decide how the next chapter will be remembered. When the final point is played, only one player will move forward, but both will have another chance to show just how far they've come since their unforgettable meeting 1 year ago.